Morning, everyone. So, good morning, people online. Okay, so we are in the third session of this course that we're doing right now for our sessions. So it's kind of an introduction. So the first session covered Venerable Legden had covered the first session, and then in the second session, Venerable Gache, he started the discussion on the Four Noble Truths. And he covered mind and mental factors. And then he informs me that the module on Lamrim he couldn't finish, so he wants me to cover that. So for our session, that's what we're going to start with. Maybe just what Lamrim, how Lamrim, the training in Lamrim helps us in our spiritual practice. What does it help us accomplish? And then for my session, I'm supposed to cover the first two truths, the truth of suffering and the truth of the causes of suffering, and also discuss a bit about the emphasis on the two practices of and the practice of conduct, how both are central to advancing your training in Buddhism. And also just give a brief introduction on the concept of selflessness, no self, or emptiness. So that's what we'll try to cover for our session. And how the way we'll do this is we'll start off with a meditation thing. It's a meditation that we've seen in the previous sessions also, but I'll do a more elaborate version of that meditation. And the discussion that we'll have on the true truths and emptiness, etc., all will be anchored in this meditation. So we'll find how, we relate what we're going to discuss to the meditation that we're going to do. So the meditation is not just about just calming down and helping you with concentration. It will also help you understand how you can reflect, contemplate on the two truths, the truth of suffering and the truth of the causes of suffering. And also selflessness and impermanence. So we'll see how we can bring in those concepts, training on those concepts into. So just to give a brief introduction of this meditation, it's called, it's a mindfulness meditation. And as you all know, there are four different kinds of mindfulnesses, four different foundations for your mindfulness training. The first one is what is called mindfulness of your body. So, or Kaya-anusmriti. Second one is the Vedana. So, mindfulness on your feelings, mindfulness of your feelings, Vedana Anusmriti. And then the third one is mindfulness of your mindfulness of consciousness, which is the Chitta Anusmriti. And then the fifth one is the fourth one is Dharma Anusmriti, or mindfulness of the mental formations. So all these different kinds of mindfulness will be addressed through the meditation that we'll do today. So our meditation will be founded in mindfulness of the body, and specifically we'll take breath as being representative of the body. It's a physical element. So we'll use that as the basis for cultivating mindfulness. So the meditation, actually, there's a very elaborate explanation of this technique in the sutras, and this meditation actually has several stages to it. So there are altogether 16 stages that are described in the text. So the first 4 stages is what we'll focus on. The next 8 stages actually pertain to how you can cultivate the different kinds of absorption states. So some of you might be familiar about form realm and the formless realm. And it's on the basis of your practice of different kinds of absorptions that you attain rebirth in those realms, form realm and formless realm. So if you target that kind of, if your target is to attain rebirth in one of those realms, then you can focus on the stages from number 5 to number 12. But if that is not your focus, then you can just skip those interim 8 stages and go to the last 4, which help you understand how you can use this meditation technique to cultivate insight into impermanence, insight into the concept of no self, insight into the concept of dukkha. So we'll just briefly address those 4 stages also. And what we seek to achieve through this kind of mental training, like most mental training, the objective is actually to put an end to the flow of afflictions, or astravas as it is called in Sanskrit. So astrava kshama is the objective, and so this technique will help us address that objective, and it will also help us cultivate concentration faculty. So as I said, we'll focus on the first 4 stages of this meditation. The first 4 stages, the first stage pertain, as I said, the object that you use for this meditation is your breath. So the breath is a very unique kind of object. It's not a gross object, as in a physical form like this glass maybe. It's not very subtle also, in the sense that it's not as subtle as mental object like emptiness or impermanence. It's kind of an intermediate object, but it's reasonably subtle. And because it is subtle, it helps us with some cultivating our concentration abilities. And the other advantage it has is kind of natural organic object that we have access to. And it does not act as a basis for any kind of unwholesome experiences. So it does not lead to any kind of unwholesome experiences, unwholesome actions from our side. So those are the advantages that we have with choosing breath as our object for this meditation. So the first stage requires us to focus on our breath, and specifically ask us to focus on a longer version of a breath. And we have or normal state of in-breath and out-breath. So first we acquaint ourselves with the normal in-breath and out-breath uh, in terms of both its duration and also the point of its origin and where it kind of terminates. Before the if you're talking about the in-breath, it starts at some point and then it goes till some point in the respiratory channel. And then it reverses and the out-breath is initiated. So you try and identify what is the length of this process and the duration of this process, and also the point of origin and the point of termination before it reverses. So first stage is about long breath. So the sutra says, I'm breathing out long. I know I'm breathing out long. So when you're breathing out long, you are mindful that you're breathing out. And then breathing in long, you know that I'm breathing in long. So you start with the out breath and then you focus on the in breath. And this is going to be a longer breath, longer than your average normal breath. And then the second stage is focusing, being mindful of your short breath. So breathing out short, I'm aware, I know I'm breathing short, breathing out short, and then breathing in short, I know I'm breathing in short. So that is the second stage. And then the third stage is uh, experiencing the whole body of breath. I shall breathe out. So you make yourself aware of the entire body of breath from its origin to the termination point. So you start off with uh, the initial point, terminal point, and then there's the entire middle part of the breath. So you need to be aware of this entire body of breath. So experiencing the whole body of breath, I shall breathe out and I shall thus train myself. So using that object, how can you train yourself in the three foundational teachings of Buddhism, which is the training of morality, shila, the training of samadhi, concentration, and the training of prajna, wisdom. So again, within this meditation itself, you can train yourself in these three aspects. And then the second part of that third stage is experiencing the whole body of breath. I shall breathe in. So the first one is breathe out. The second one is breathe in. And thus I will train myself. And then the fourth part of this, fourth stage of this meditation will be calming the body formation. I shall breathe out. And thus I will train myself. So the fourth stage actually requires you to deploy some specific techniques to calm the bodily formations. The bodily formation here specifically refers to the breathing process. So when you're breathing out, how can you calm yourself? And how can you calm yourself and calm the bodily formation when you're breathing in? And how would that lead to training yourself again in the three trainings of wisdom, samadhi, and morality. So those are the four stages. So before we proceed, the first important thing that you need to pay attention to is make sure that wherever you're meditating, it's free of any kind of distractions. So in your house also, and the places there's too much sound in the place you've chosen for meditation, then it will not it will create a lot of distraction and it will not help you with your meditation concentrations and all that. So make sure that the place has reasonable quiet and mm, then the other thing that you need to pay attention to is your posture. So you've been introduced to the 7-point lotus Padmasana Vairocana posture, which speaks about deploying a full lotus posture with legs. So the full Padmasana, if possible, or half Padmasana, or maybe just a regular Sukhasana is fine. But the most important thing is for you to ensure that your spine is erect. So if your spine is not erect and if your vertebrae are not aligned properly, then as you meditate, because of the spine not being erect, there will be some obstructions to your blood flow, energy flows, and then because of that obstruction, you'll start experiencing pain in your back and other parts of the body also. So keeping your back erect is extremely important. Keep your shoulders straight, then your arms relaxed, and use the meditation posture. Left palm holding the right palm, keep it in your lap, and the thumbs touching each other. And you can keep your eyes closed if you find it's too distracting. But as you develop your meditation practice, it's more important for you to habituate yourself to keeping your eyes half open. With eyes closed, there's the risk that you become sleepy after a little while, and that destroys your meditation practice. Then, so half open is recommended, but if it's too distracting, you can start with keeping your eyes closed, and half open. The gaze can be pointed down the tip of your nose. Tongue needs to be rested against the upper row of teeth, just behind the upper row of teeth. So, okay, let's start the meditation. So deploy this posture first. Keep your back erect. And the first stage of sati. So ana means out breath, and apana means the in breath. So anapana sati or anapana smriti. Smriti is mindfulness. So mindfulness of the out breath and the in breath is what we're going to do. Uh, as I said, the breath is not a very gross object. It's reasonably subtle. So initially, it's possible that it's difficult for us to register. And so when we are trying to cultivate mindfulness of the breath, essentially what we're doing is trying to register the sensations that the air that we draw in and expel. We try to register the sensations that it creates in the nostrils, in the chest, in the abdomen. So essentially, it's the tactile consciousness that we are aware of. So initially, what we can do is to help us with the concentration. The breath can be subtle and fine, light and fine. But if it is light and fine, then it becomes difficult for us to register. Breath can also turn a little heavy and coarse, and it happens even in our regular routine. Usually, it happens when we are exhausted or we are agitated or angry. Uh, so, if the breath is very light and fine, then it becomes a little difficult for us to register. So, maybe initially, what we can do is force ourselves, force the breath to be a little coarse, a little heavy, so that you can register the sensations that it leaves behind in the nostrils and in the chest and the abdomen. And as you breathe in and breathe out, you can also use the ear consciousness to support your mindfulness. So as you breathe in, there will be a slight sound that it produces. So breathe in a little, make the breath a little hoarse so that you can register that sound too. Same with when you breathe out, but make sure that it's not so loud that people sitting around you get distracted with it. So just coarse enough so that you can register it. So the ear consciousness can be deployed in support of the tactile consciousness to register the breath. So let's start with a slightly heavy, slightly coarse breath first. And start with the out breath, then observe the out breath, and then observe the in breath, and continue till you actually are comfortable in this, in your ability to recognize the sensations. keep it heavy. And then after that, you can revert to a more normal, regular kind of breath. Okay, let's start. Now gradually bring it back to normal. So don't exert much pressure as you breathe in. As you breathe in and breathe out, just observe the movement of your chest. Register the expansion and the contraction of the chest as you breathe. Also observe the movement of your abdomen as you breathe in and breathe out. Observe if the abdomen is rising or falling as you breathe in and breathe out. Now force the breath a little bit and make longer than your average normal breath. And then gradually lengthen it. Keep lengthening it. Keep lengthening it till you reach the point where you feel that this is the longest you can draw in. And now, when you're drawing in this long in breath and expelling the long out breath, observe the movement of your chest. Register if there's an expansion or a contraction as you breathe in and breathe out. Now, with your long in breath and out breath, also observe the movement of your abdomen. Register whether it is rising or falling. Keep your breathing breath long. Find it hard to register the movement of your abdomen, then you can just place your hand on the abdomen and check whether it is rising or falling. Now bring your breath back to your normal breath, breathing. Now force your breath to be short, a little more rapid than normal, and observe the sensations. Gradually shorten it and bring it to a point where you feel that this is the shortest you can do. And then observe the expansion and contraction of your chest as your breath is shortened. Also register the rising and falling of the abdomen as you shorten your breath. With your short breath, just check whether the abdomen rises or falls as you breathe in and breathe out. Okay, now bring back your breath to your normal length. Keep your focus on the in-breath and the out-breath as it passes through your nostrils. Let's just do a short meditation to set a motivation for the session. So just remind yourself that you've been blessed with perfect human rebirth in this lifetime, characterized by the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments. But it's not certain that we'll have access to these freedoms and endowments always. We'll be separated from these freedoms and endowments at the time of death. And death is inevitable. The timing of death is uncertain, could be any moment. And if we die tomorrow, today, it's very possible, very likely that we might end up in the lower realms and experience a lot of suffering. None of us wants to endure that kind of suffering in the lower realms. If by some good karma, the force of good karma from the past, we are reborn in the human realm or in the realm of gods, even here, even in the realm of humans and gods, we experience a lot of suffering. Realm, we have the suffering of birth and death. And between birth and death, there's a lot of suffering in the form of illnesses and aging, and a lot of mental anguish that we experience. So whether we are born in the lower realms or in the higher realms, they're not free from suffering. So there's nothing to trust about either the realm of humans or the realm of gods. So the higher realms also have a lot of suffering. So there's no place in samsara which is free from suffering. So in this lifetime, we have this wonderful capacity to investigate the nature of samsara, understand its drawbacks, and understand the virtues of freeing ourselves from the forces that keep us bound in samsara. So we should use that intelligence and aspire to free ourselves from these forces that keep us bound in samsara. So once we free ourselves from these forces, we attain the state of liberation. But liberation for oneself is not sufficient. We need to be aware of similar aspirations of the other sentient beings. And we should develop a wish to help other sentient beings in their pursuit of liberation. The only way we can do it meaningfully is by developing a capacity to help them, guide them on the path towards liberation. And that can be done meaningfully if we attain the state of omniscience. So it's the state of Samyak Sambuddha that we should target as a spiritual goal. And in order to advance on the path towards Sambodhi, we need some assistance. And we get that assistance through the 3 jewels, the Buddha jewel, the teacher who shows us the path, the Dharma jewel, the actual path in the form of explained, and the more importantly, the insights that his disciples have cultivated in their mind stream. And the Sangha jewel, the body of practitioners who have cultivated insights, who can guide us, who can assist us. Let's take refuge in these 3 jewels, the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. And with the 3 jewels, visualized in front of us, in the space in front of us. Let's make a short offering of the 7-limb prayer. So the first one is Vandana, or homage, and offering prostrations. So visualize yourself and copies of yourself filling the entire space, and you can make offerings in the form of prostrations to the three jewels. So you prostrate with your body, speech, and mind. The second limb is the limb of archana, or making offerings of substances. So visualize that the entire space is filled with precious substances and offer it to the three jewels. Third one is papadeshna, or confession of your transgressions. So with the three jewels in front of you, you can confess any transgressions that you committed. And then punya anumodana. So what past, same with others, offer all that merit to the three jewels. Adheshna is an appeal to the three jewels, the Buddha, to not pass into nirvana, abide with us. And yachna, or the plea to continue to turn the wheel of Dharma, so that we can continue receiving teachings from the Buddhas. And then the final limb is to offer all the merits, so that the mind of enlightenment arises in your mind stream. So let's just do a short digital prayer to generate this mind of enlightenment in your mind stream. So I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. That motivation, let's begin the discussion. So we've kind of addressed the, okay, people would say that this is the preliminary part, but I say this is the main part of the session. The preliminaries is what will follow now, the discussion that we're supposed to engage in. I'll try and correlate that discussion with the meditation that we've done. So before we proceed with the meditation, let me hear some feedback from you on what experience you had during the meditation session. So any observations you observed as you lengthened your breath, as you shortened your breath, any observations?
Before we did not read, wouldn't we go?
Yeah, you can try that also. The sequence is. You can try that if that benefits you. The meditation on the short breath is essentially to help you cultivate some familiarity with what happens when your mental state is not good, as in you're experiencing uneasiness, or you're agitated, or you're angry. Yeah, so that naturally kind of becomes short. So that part of the meditation is just to kind of acquaint you with that kind of mental state. Here we are kind of deliberately doing it so that you can understand the difference between the longer, shorter breath. And you make a mental note, okay, this is what my short breath feels like, and this is what my long breath feels like, and this is what my normal average breath feels like in terms of length and duration. So any observations when you're breathing long, when you're breathing short, anything you noted? Or
I found that when I was breathing long, I was very aware of my chest, my abdomen, and the rising and the falling. But when I was breathing short, it was like it was almost like my chest, I could sort of make out
Yeah.
my abdomen.
Yeah.
Not-
It is too rapid.
Yeah.
Okay. That's true. In fact, that's what is supposed to happen. As you enhance your investigation scrutiny of the long breath or your breath, as your concentration becomes more subtle, the breath is supposed to become longer and finer. That is the natural evolution. So as your concentration becomes more intense, probably when you started with your meditation, the concentration was a little more intense when went to the short breath. So you could register the movements much better. As the concentration develops further, you'll find that the length of the breath becomes even longer, finer. It becomes even, but even though it becomes finer, you're still able to register it. Initially, it's difficult for us to register because it's fine. So that's the reason I asked you to kind of force yourself to make it a little coarse and heavy. Any other observation?
I felt like I was in a state of flow.
Uh,
I think when we were breathing long and then we moved to breathing short, it was like I was just doing whatever you said very easily, which is generally not the case with me. So that was really.
Okay. Yeah.
It felt like I was like a machine.
Yeah, I mean,
It felt like an automatic response to
Mhm.
everything that you were saying. I was doing.
as I said, since it is a natural organic kind of an object, the more you acquaint yourself to observing it, the easier it gets and the more effective it becomes. So you persist with the meditation and you find that it is really helpful. So, any other observation in terms of sensations or what about the movement of the chest and abdomen? Something that is different.
Yeah, actually, in the slow breath, I found the movement is more vertical than
Okay.
big vertical.
Vertical.
I can say. Long breath, you can feel the entry. In
Okay.
the short, you can register the breath.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also something that happens. Yeah. Anything else?
I also felt that when I in the long breath,
Mm.
like the air was filling me up,
Mm. Okay.
which normally I'm like that, but that's because I was concentrating and
Mm.
like literally filling myself up. And so I felt all of me was like
And that's a good sign. Yeah. That actually what happens is you're meditating on what is called Vayu Dhatu, and your mind assumes the form of the wind, the air that you're meditating on. The mind has assumed that form, automatically kind of have this perception of feeling a little lighter than normally. So even that is something that is also very. Anything else?
Curious about why is the breath a really important part of meditation? It's just a question, but I was just saying that using like the body observation or observation of your thought. I mean, this seems to be referring to more the breath observation.
Yes. Are you asking me why it's important? Why is breath a suitable object?
Yeah, what is, I mean, I don't want to say, okay, what is the final goal, but then to some extent, it might, not a goal, but it's to say, like, free yourself from certain thoughts and,
Mhm.
where does that? That's
Mhm.
what is my, uh,
Yeah.
away from this, but,
Okay.
uh,
So you need an object to cultivate your practice of mindfulness. It is important because ultimately, why we are engaging in this training is because you want to cultivate what is called analytical insight into the true nature of phenomena. And for that, you need a mind which is very concentrated. And this kind of mindfulness helps with cultivating that. intense level of concentration. And with other forms of in other objects, like if you take the gross body, it's an extremely gross form, and because of the there's a difference between breath and the regular form in terms of the grossness and the subtlety of the object. Because breath is relatively more subtle, your mind also gets the opportunity to kind of generate those kind of subtler levels. And with that kind of subtle levels of consciousness, then you're able to enhance your levels of concentration better. And the other reason I mentioned it because breath, it's kind of a neutral object. It does not give the opportunity for any kind of unwholesomeness to arise in one instant. It's a very neutral object. So it doesn't encourage any kind of unwholesomeness to arise in one person in our mental continuum. And that's another reason why we choose breath. And it's a natural, organic, easily accessible, always available, always on kind of an object. We carry it with us all the time. So that's the reason it's used. And you're right. I mean, it's not only about breath. I mean, this meditation, as I mentioned, different stages, and the final stages of this meditation actually help us cultivate these analytical insights that I've mentioned. So we'll see that how we can use this meditation to cultivate those insights into impermanence and the concept of no self, which is critical for us to generate the wisdom to eliminate the afflictions that are the cause of our suffering. So that is the goal. So eliminating the flow of afflictions or the astras, that is the goal. And that for that we need wisdom. And that wisdom actually can be cultivated through this meditation practice. So that's the purpose. Okay, there's an important thing that happens when you're breathing in long or as compared to your normal average breath. The movement of the chest, when you breathe in, what does it do? How does the chest move? It expands, right? It expands. And when you breathe out, it contracts. But for the abdomen, for your normal breath, when the length of breath is normal, that's what happens. It rises when you breathe in, it falls when you breathe out. Yeah. But when the breath becomes longer, did you notice that your abdomen actually reverses its movement? Yeah. With the longer breath, what happens is your chest rises, of course, but the abdomen falls. Yeah. And when you breathe out, the chest contracts and the abdomen rises. So we'll continue with this meditation in the second half of the session. And at that time, I want you to pay attention to the movement of the abdomen.
So that didn't happen to me and Buddha kind of thing in yoga. And so I just followed that.
Okay.
So you consciously fill your, when you take a long breath, consciously fill your abdomen first and then keep, moving up and fill up your chest. And then when you breathe out, this is what you first empty your chest and then down and then, your abdomen, and it like sort of goes and sticks to your spine. So, yeah.
Like
that's
pot
what-
breathing.
Sorry?
Pot breathing.
For breath, yeah. Check again, maybe. Is your chest is expanding, it kind of puts pressure on your abdominal cavity and it kind of draws it and actually it falls when the breath is longer than normal. Yeah. So maybe in second half of the session we can try and. So yeah, so that's the meditation part. So let's proceed with teachings, with the discussion. So yeah, as I mentioned in the previous session, Veludachi had paused at, he was discussing the Lamrim, right? He presented some sort of an outline of the Lamrim teachings, and he couldn't finish it, and he asked me to cover it. So Lamrim or the teachings on the graduated stages to the path of enlightenment. What essentially it does is it provides us with some practical methods to conduct our spiritual practice. So there are all kinds of different kinds of. First, it describes the different stages in our evolution towards the goal of liberation or omniscience, and it describes the different kind of meditations that one needs to cultivate to ascend through that path. So the person, a regular person, is obsessed with the immediate concerns of the present lifetime. From that kind of state of being to cultivating an aspiration for not success just in this lifetime, but success in the or happiness in the future lifetime, and then a liberation from samsara, and then the ultimate state of omniscience. So those three spiritual goals are described in the Lamrim text, and then based on what one is more inclined towards, three different kinds of spiritual practitioners or trainees are identified. So three different spiritual practitioners, the one group of practitioners which are called to be the small scope trainees, then the middle scope trainees, and the greater scope trainees. So Lamrim actually presents the spiritual part for all these for the training that is unique to these different three categories of trainings. And it starts off with some preliminary kind of practices. And the most significant preliminary teaching that provides is this teaching on what is called Guru devotion. So that becomes the foundation of your practice. So it explains what are the drawbacks of not engaging in Guru devotion and the benefits of relying on a Guru for your spiritual training. So that all that is part of the preliminary teachings, and then it describes the kind of the different themes that frees the spirit of the practitioner into what is called renunciation. So how does it do that? It does that by explaining on the concept of the optimum, the preciousness of human rebirth, and then something that we just addressed. I spoke about the freedoms and the endowments that describe our present existence. So the Lamrim talks about that extensively, and then it talks about the inevitability of death, the immediacy of death, the uncertainty of the time of death, and then it also gives a presentation of the law of causality, or the law of karma, and it speaks about the pervasiveness of the suffering nature of samsara. So it gives a presentation of the different kinds of sufferings. So these teachings pertain to the training that is meant for the middle scope trainees. And then it talks about, it presents different themes that helps us open our heart to mental states like loving kindness, compassion, and the altruistic spirit of enlightenment, or bodhicitta. So that's that part of the text which talks about these different things. It presents a training which is meant for the greater scope trainees, and then it combines these themes with the presentation of description of transcendent wisdom, where it presents a description about the concept of selflessness, no self, emptiness, and all that. So that's what the Lamrim teachings essentially present. And if we were to talk about the different subjects in the Lamrim, so as I said, the first significant preliminary teaching that it provides is this teaching about Guru devotion. So once you've identified your Guru and started relying on a Guru, then it talks about the preciousness of human rebirth. And once you've understood the preciousness of human rebirth, then you try and understand how to extract the best how best to extract the sense or the value out of this optimum human rebirth. And for that, you need to have a comprehension of these 3 levels of training: the lower scope training, the middle scope training, and the training. And the lower scope training specifically trains the practitioner in developing what is called a yearning for a good rebirth. So it acquaints the trainee with the dangers of falling in the lower ramps and the kind of suffering that you would experience in the lower ramps. Based on that, you develop a yearning for a higher rebirth, a good rebirth. And that part of the text teaches you the techniques to, the means to ensure that you would experience happiness in the next rebirth. And how you do that is by developing a proper comprehension of the suffering that you experience in the lower rebirths, lower ramps. And based on that, you develop what is called refuge. You wish to take refuge, somebody who can protect you from suffering in the lower realms. And the concept of refuge is present in, and we address that too in the short meditation that we did at the start of the session. So taking refuge in the 3 jewels, and then also developing faith in the law of cause and effect. So any unwholesome action that you engage in will create unwholesome results, and any wholesome actions that you engage in will result in wholesome experiences in the future. So you have to generate faith in that principle. So this is all what is presented in the text, which pertains to the training for the lower scope trainees. And then the middle scope trainees, for training that is unique to them, essentially addresses the concept of liberation. So it starts off by emphasizing the need to develop an aspiration for liberation, as opposed to just good higher rebirth. And then based on that aspiration, once you've generated that aspiration, you need to know what path will lead to liberation. So for that, you need to understand how the process of birth and rebirth happens. So you presented with the concept of the 12 names of dependent origination in this part of the text. So thinking about the sources that propel rebirth into samsara, thinking about what kind of training would help you arrest that process of birth, death, and rebirth based on the understanding of the 12 links of dependent origination. So that's essentially what is covered in the second part of the text. And then the third part of the text pertains to the training that is unique to the greater scope trainees. So that gives a presentation about, it starts off by giving a presentation about cultivating the mind of enlightenment. So the mind of enlightenment, as you're now aware, it's an aspiration for the state of omniscience. But the purpose is that so you can help other sentient beings. So the third part deals with this at the outset, how to cultivate bodhicitta through the 7-fold cause and effect method, and the method of exceeding self and others. And then once you trained yourself in the development of bodhicitta, then how do you use that to advance on the spiritual path in terms of enhancing your accumulation of wisdom and merit? And that can be done by practicing what is called the 6 paramitas. So the paramita of generosity, the paramita of ethical discipline, perseverance, patience, and then meditative stabilization and wisdom. So that is what is essentially covered in the part of the text. So this is essentially what Lamrim presents. And to just summarize it, what it does, it presents the 3 gateways to conduct your spiritual practice. So the first gateway is the gateway of renunciation. So how do you cultivate renunciation? You cultivate renunciation on the basis of your understanding of the suffering nature of samsara. You cultivate renunciation on the basis of your understanding, comprehension of how the 12 links of dependent origination come about. So once you cultivate renunciation, that's the first step. Yeah. And then follow that up with cultivation of compassion. So you have cultivated renunciation on the basis of understanding of your own suffering, but you extend that argument, your understanding to cover other sentient beings also. So you have realized that just like you are suffering, other sentient beings are also suffering. And then you develop a wish to free other sentient beings from suffering, the causes of suffering. And once you've done that, you cultivated what is called compassion. And based on compassion, now we've generated that wish to help other sentient beings on the path to liberation, but you don't have the capacity to help them meaningfully. So you generate the wish to attain that state, which will give you the capacity to help other sentient beings. That state is the state of omniscience. So then you reflect on how you can attain that state of omniscience. And before you do that, you can cultivate the aspiration to attain that state of omniscience. And when you cultivate that state, that kind of mind, and that mind becomes spontaneous in your mind stream, that's when you are said to have cultivated what is called bodhicitta. So the first gateway is refuge, the second gateway is renunciation, and the third gateway is bodhicitta. So these are the three gateways that Lamrim presents. So the Lamrim teachings essentially is an explanation of these three levels of these three gateways. So refuge, renunciation, and bodhicitta. Okay, and one other thing that becomes evident when we look at the Lamrim body of teaching is that there's a emphasis on cultivation of wisdom. Of course, Buddha says that it's a lack of wisdom or ignorance that keeps us trapped in samsara. So there's what is called avidya, which is the source of, which is the root of our suffering in samsara. So in order to eliminate that avidya, you need wisdom, which is the direct antidote. But wisdom by itself is not sufficient. So, as I just explained at the outset, the Lamrim teachings present practical methods to give effect to your training for your spiritual flight from your present state into the ultimate state of omniscience. Now, that flight requires two wings to support it, and the two wings that support that flight are the wings of wisdom, of course, on one hand. On the other hand is the wing of method or conduct. So you need both these practices to evolve for you to advance on this path towards omniscience, and that aspect you need a union of both these two. And the necessity of cultivating this union of means and wisdom is actually highlighted in the text Bodhipat Pradeep, which is the root text on basis of which the Lamrim teachings were kind of composed. So Lamrim is a commentary on this text called Bodhipat Pradeep. And in that text, which is authored by Lama Tisha, he says, in order to abandon all the obscurations of affliction and wisdom, so there are two kinds of obscurations, wisdom obscurations and afflictive obscurations. So in order to abandon all the obscurations of affliction and wisdom, always meditate on perfect wisdom practice along with the means. So you have to unify the practice of wisdom and means. So he says, Klesha Neya Avritta Tasmat Prahanartham Asheshata Prajna Parmita Yogam Sa Upayam Bhavayet Sada. So Prajna Parmita Yogam Sa Upayam Bhavayet Sada. So Prajna Parmita is the perfection of wisdom. Yogam as a union, and Sa Upaya, so with Upaya. Upaya is the practice of method. And you need to kind of combine these two in order to Prahanartham Asheshta, so complete removal of both the kleshas and the neya avarna. So klesha avarna is the afflictive obscurations, and the Neya Avarana are the cognitive obscurations or wisdom obscurations. So you need to remove both these, and in order for you to eliminate both these completely, what you need is a yoga of Prajna Paramita and Upaya. So union of perfection of wisdom and means. And the means, as I said, can be cultivated through practice, generosity, ethical discipline, perseverance and patience, and meditative stabilization. So that's an aspect that comes to, it's emphasized extensively in the longer text. Okay, so the two truths will break for 5-10 minutes, right? We'll take a short break in this stretch your legs and
This is a quote from Lama Tsongkhapa.
yeah, Bodhi Pradeep. Yeah. So the lamp to enlightenment. Yeah. Lamp to the path of enlightenment. So we'll continue the discussion after the break. Yeah. Just 5-10 minutes.
I'll be pausing the recording. We'll be back in 5-10 minutes. Sure.
Right. So this whole thing about cultivating a union of means and wisdom, the goal is so that you attain the state of what is called a cessation of uh, all the suffering and the causes of suffering. So causes of suffering are in the nature of obscurations, cognitive and afflictive obscurations.
Just one small question. You
Yeah.
said wisdom and means.
Yes.
So wisdom is the way I understand is the understanding, and the means is then putting it into action. Would that be the
Yeah. That's cognitive. So to kind of highlight the difference a little more, when you are sitting in meditation, specifically if your meditation has evolved quite a bit and you are in what is called a meditative equipoise, the only object that you engage with is this wisdom of selflessness or wisdom of emptiness there. And the other minds like compassion and bodhicitta and all these are dormant in that stage. So when you arise from that meditation and you're conducting your regular kind of activities, then those minds become manifest, and you can conduct your activities, whether it's an activity that involves engaging in some sort of in some sort of charity work or whatever it is. Your mind has a compassion. The mind stream has compassion at a manifest level. It also has the wisdom at a manifest level. So you have the wisdom of no self, which helps you realize that okay, self-cherishing is not important. Other cherishing is more virtuous. So in that state, the other minds, which make a part of this means, they become active. Yeah. So these two things kind of go hand in hand. So as the more you enhance your wisdom practice, the more your practice of means gets enhanced. The more you enhance your practice of means, your wisdom becomes more clear. So those two things kind of go. ultimately, you want to cultivate this wisdom because you want to attain the state of omniscience. But the purpose is more important. The purpose is so that you can serve other sentient beings. And that can be done through compassion, through practice of compassion. And practice of compassion is what essential is the essence of this aspect of being. So all this, as I said, the this whole practice is described beautifully by the Buddha in his teaching called the Dharma Chakra Pravartan Sutra. And that sutra gives a presentation of what is called the Four Noble Truths. And it is briefly covered in the previous session. So, what are the Four Noble Truths? Why do we consider it to be the foundational kind of fundamental teaching to our spiritual quest? Why realization of the Four Noble Truths is fundamental to our natural quest? First of all, what is our natural quest? We need to get some grasp of that. And then, what are the four truths? And then you'll notice that there's a specific order in which those truths are presented. It talks about two pairs of cause and effect, and what are those pairs of cause and effect? And then, what are the salient aspects of the Four Noble Truths, and how do you apply the understanding of emptiness? So those are the things that we'll just briefly cover, and then we'll continue our meditation and see how we can apply some of these aspects in that meditation. So, realizing the Four Noble Truths is fundamental to our natural quest. So, what is our natural quest? Do you have any idea how we could describe our instinctive natural quest? So, what is our natural quest? Yeah. So essentially, that's what it is. Yeah. So, we have an innate desire for happiness, all of us. And we have an innate desire to overcome suffering, to be free from suffering. So that is our instinctive, natural quest. Nobody is beyond this natural instinctive desire. So, and this desire is very instinctive, very natural to our being. And that's what defines our natural quest. That being said, how would you describe?
Not even very highly realized beings. They are also not exempt from this.
Unless they've reached the ultimate state of perfect realization and cessation of all the suffering. Till you reach that point,
then it becomes irrelevant. But
then you're just reaping the rewards of, as I said, a person who's perfected all the realization, he would be then delivering on the a prayer that he had set into motion, which is to serve other sentient beings. So, whatever realizations he's attained will be deployed in helping other sentient beings also reach the same state. But he would have reached that state. So for him, his desire to attain the state of happiness, and happiness is not the contaminated happiness that we experience in our regular kind of routine. This is genuine happiness, durable happiness, stable happiness, and also the desire for overcoming suffering. And how do we overcome suffering? We put an end to eliminate the causes that create that suffering. And that person who's attained that state has put an end. He's attained the state of cessation of those, that kind of suffering. So for those people, of course, but for everybody, even the person who is about to attain that state, this would be the instinctive pursuit. So for regular people like us, okay, we have this innate desire for happiness and an innate desire to overcome suffering, but what characterizes our present being? So if you ask yourself, how would you describe your present state of being?
grasping and aversion.
Sorry?
Grasping and aversion.
Yeah, grasping and aversion, yes. Grasping and aversion. So we're grasping at sensual pleasures and we're trying to avoid things that we think are unpleasant. Yes. Anything else?
And also through the ego, we say, why me? Why I have to suffer? Why they hurt me? Why they beat me?
Okay, yes, yeah. So that's also some sort of grasping, yeah. Okay, anything else? How do you describe our current state?
I tend to be very, you say I, like as she said, I become the most important in,
Yes.
like, you know, when you're interacting with people or anything,
Yes.
it's because of that I have to benefit for
Right.
anyone else.
Yeah. So this self-cherishing attitude is very prominent in our thought process. Yeah. So everything that we do is to benefit ourselves in terms of experiencing more pleasure and looking for fame and reputation and profit and avoiding, as she said, avoiding pain, the counterpart of these experiences, avoiding sensual pain and then painful sensations, then avoiding ill repute, avoiding criticism, and avoiding loss. Yeah. So those are the things that kind of yeah.
Also, our seeking of happiness and pleasure is the wrong way. It's not with the right livelihood. You're not using the eightfold path, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Way we're going about finding joy is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Especially in the modern world,
Right.
more now than before.
Yeah. So when we describe our current state of being, we see that it is characterized by a sense of powerlessness. So we don't have any power over forces that lead to uh, suffering experiences like illnesses, suffering experiences like aging, suffering experience like death. And then we are also powerless over forces that create mental uh, unhappiness, mental anguish. Our, our experiences, there might be some temporary moments of perceived peace, but essentially, if we examine our current state of being at a deeper level, it is characterized by these suffering experiences of aging, illness, death, and then a lot of mental anguish. And there's a lot of dissatisfaction that we experience. So that's the current state, and then we aspire for a future state, potential future state, which we said would be characterized by happiness and free of suffering. Yeah. So that is the potential future state. So we need to understand what are the causes that create our current state of being, and we also need to identify what could be the causes that could help us lead to the potential future state. So when we look at that, when we think about our current state of being, we can actually call it as an unenlightened state of being, and then the potential future state as an enlightened state of being. So, what are the sources that perpetuate this present unenlightened state of being, and what are the causes or the paths that could help us actualize the potential future enlightened state of being? So. We spoke about current state and potential future state, and then we also kind of refer to the causal flow that creates the present current state, and the causal flow that could lead us to the potential future state. So the four truths are essentially a presentation of these concepts. So what they do is they give a description of our current and potential. So there are two truths which relate to a state of being, and two truths which talk about a flow. So there's a state and flow description in the Four Noble Truths. So the two truths that give a description of the states, the current state and the potential future state, are the truth of suffering and the truth of cessations of suffering. So truth of suffering talks about our current state of being, and the truth of cessation of suffering talks about our potential future state of being. And the two truths that highlight the causal flow are the truth of the causes of suffering and the truth of the paths that lead to the cessation of suffering. So, the truth of the causes of suffering or the sources of suffering, and the truth of the paths that lead to the cessation of suffering. So, truth of suffering and then the truth of cessation of suffering then describe the two states, and the causal flows are described by the truth of paths and the truth of cessation, truth of the origin of suffering. So you'll find that in the presentation of the truth, the Four Noble Truths, there's a specific order in which the truths are present. What is the order that is used to describe the Four Noble Truths? Anyone? the order in which it is presented?
There is suffering.
Sorry?
There is suffering.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So there are two pairs. The first pair, two pairs of effect and cause. So the first pair is the truth of suffering, which is the effect, and the second pair, the second truth in the first pair is the truth of the causes of suffering. So the effect comes first, and the cause is presented subsequent to that. And then there's the second pair of effect and cause, which is that the truth of cessation of suffering, that is the effect. And then the last one that is presented is the truth of the paths that lead or that cause this cessation of suffering. So that's the order in which the four truths are presented. Now, there's a very specific reason why this order is used. The order is why the truths are presented in this order is actually explained through an analogy that the Buddha used. Actually, it's also mentioned in a text called Mahayana Uttara Tantra by Arya Maitreya. So it said in that text that Vyadhir Neo Vyadhi Hetu Praheya Swastham Prapyam Vaishajyam Sevyam Evam Dukkha Hetu Nirodho Atha Margo Niyam Heya Spashitavya Nishevya. So anyone who understands Sanskrit? Yeah? Yes. Correct. Yeah. So the analogy that is used here is of Vyadi. Vyadi is some sort of is a reference to a sickness or an illness or hardship. Yeah. So the text says Vyadhir Neo. So you need to know the illness, the nature of the illness first. Yeah. Yeah. Diagnose the illness. Vyadi Hetu Praheya. What does it mean? So the cause, Vyadi Hetu is the cause of illness, right? Praheya is to eliminate the cause of illness. And this is swastham praptam. So you obtain the state of perfect health. And then vaishajyam sevyam. So you use medicine to attain that state of good health, perfect health. Evam, so similarly, dukkham hetu nirodha marga. So dukh, hetu, nirod, and marg. These are the four truths, right? So the dukkha, dukkham hetu nirodha marga, neyam heya sparshitavya nishevya. So dukkha, neyam. So you need to know the illness. Heya is to eliminate, right? So the eliminate hetu, dukkha hetu. Then nirod, sparshitavya. So you connect with. Nirod is the cessation. And marga is nishevya. So you deploy the path. So just as the disease needs to be diagnosed, its cause eliminated, a healthy state achieved, and the remedy implemented, so also should suffering, its causes, its cessation, and the path be known, removed, attained, and undertaken respectively. So the sequence is kind of explained through this analogy. So suffering is like an illness. So you diagnose your illness, unless you know what causes that illness, you don't medicines to use. So you diagnose the illness, or you acknowledge that, okay, you're suffering first, as you identify the illness. And the external and the internal conditions that lead or bring about that illness are the sources or the causes of that suffering, illness. And the state of cure from that illness is the cessation of suffering and its causes. And the medicine that cures the disease is the truth or the paths that leads to that cessation. So initially, one must diagnose the illness and identify one's illness. That is the truth of suffering. And in order to know which medicine to take, it is necessary to know the causes of the illness. So you identify what is causing the illness, and then determine whether there is a cure for that illness. So that is important. If there's no cure for that illness, then you just pray. Yeah. So the Buddha asked the trainees to investigate whether it's possible to reach a state of cessation of the sufferings. So that can be done using a lot of reasoning. So trainee who is trying to cultivate compassion and bodhicitta actually does this investigation extensively. And then he realizes that the truth of cessation is possible by cultivating a certain kind of wisdom. And then that wisdom will help me tackle the obscurations of affliction and cognition. And that will help me attain the state of the cessation. So when he develops that confidence, then he goes about cultivating those states. So determine whether a cure of the illness is possible. The cure of the illness is the truth of cessation. And then identify the medicine that can cure the illness. So that medicine is the truth of the paths that lead to the cessation. So that's those are the four truths. And the order actually pertains to the sequence in which the trainee has to conduct his training. So that's the order in which he goes about practicing the Buddhist path and attain the realizations. So realizations in his mind stream will arise in this sequence. So initially he will have a realization of the truth of suffering. Then he will have a realization of the truth of the causes of suffering. Then he will have a realization that true cessation is feasible. So he'll have a realization of the truth of cessation. And then he will have a realization of what are the paths that lead to that cessation. And he will go about cultivating those paths. So that is all about the Four Noble Truths, the order of the Four Noble Truths. So we'll just briefly cover the first two, and then we'll see how we can deploy this understanding in the meditation that we've done. So the first truth is the truth of suffering, or dukkha satya. So dukkha here actually is a reference to a state of existence, or current state of existence, which the Buddha said is conditioned by karma and afflictions, which create that karma. So the concept of dukkha needs to kind of extend or embrace both the environment that we abide in and also the sentient beings that abide in that environment. So the environment that we abide in is called the Bhajan Lok, the environment. And then the counterpart of the Bhajan Lok is the Sattva Lok. So in order to understand the Bhajan Lok, one needs to have some understanding of the presentation of cosmology in Buddhism. So it speaks about three realms. So what are the three realms that Buddhism talks about? The three realms of existence, three realms of suffering. Yeah. Yes. So Kam Lok, Roop Lok, and Arupa Lok. So desire realm, form realm, and formless realm. So we are part of the desire realm. So most of the sentient beings in the universe would be part of the desire realm. So all these six different kinds of beings are part of the desire realm. And then a certain category of devas, they inhabit the form realm and the formless realm based on whatever samadhis that they've cultivated, absorption states that they have cultivated. So to understand these three realms, I think you can think about these three realms as being different levels of consciousnesses. Yeah? So if you attained a final state of consciousness in your mind stream, then you will probably be reborn in one of the higher realms. So if you attained the state of absorption, the first absorption, then you will be born in the form realm, in the first plane of the form realm. If you attain the second absorption state, you inhabit a Deva realm in Deva plane in the form realm, the second plane of the form realms, so on. So if your mind is finer, it is tamed, it is subdued, free of afflictions, then you attain a subtler level of consciousness and you can ascend to the form realm and the formless realm. But that is not the purpose of our spiritual practice. Of course, we need what is our purpose? To seek release from this cycle. Yeah. So, but what is happening is right now we are caught in this infinite kind of circle of birth and death and rebirth and again. So we might be kind of hopping between planes, and sometimes we would be born in the higher realms. We have been born in the higher realms also, but most of the time we spend in the lower realms. What we need is release from this cycle. Yeah. Okay, form
Can you,
RAM.
can you describe what it looks like? Desire and we know. We live
Yeah.
with.
Desire RAM, it's a reference to the fact that desire is a very prominent kind of affliction in our mind streams. Yeah. The beings in the form realm have overcome the desire to sensual pleasures. So, they. Sorry. This is form also, yeah. Beings in the form realm are also, they also have a physical form. Those who are born in the formless realm do not have any gross physical form. They have only mind, yeah. Yeah. But within the form realm, you can speak of beings who exhibit desire as the prominent affliction, and beings who overcome desire to sensual pleasures, but are still in the form. Or not on Earth, yeah, different realms, different planes, yeah, different planes, and you're born there through the power of meditation, through the power of samadhis, absorptions. So different kinds of absorptions that you can practice. Yeah.
So in a different dimension or a different planet or a different what?
Part of this universe, and that's how his organism describes. Yeah. So till the third plane of the form realm, you can deem it to be part of this universe. And so this is the Bhajan Lok. So the Sattva Lok spoke about 6 different kinds of beings. So what are the 6 different kinds of beings? We are part of the Manushya Lok, right? So we are humans, of course. And then something that's visible to us, the animals. Yeah. So Tiryanshan or the Teryak Lok. Then there's the hell beings or the Naraka Lok. Yeah. There's the realm of the hungry ghost or the Pretalok, and the realm of the Devas, the Devaloks. So within Devas, there's the other category of the demigods also, which is the realm of the Asuras. Yeah. So these are the 6 different kinds of sentient beings that inhabit this world.
So what about microscopic beings? They would be in the
They are animals in the animal realm, part of the animal realm.
amoeba and
that is debatable, yeah. So we're talking about sentient beings, so beings that have the quality of sentience. So anything that you can think about, insects or small insects, bacteria, amoeba, that gets into debate territory. Can you actually attribute sentience to them? That is, yeah.
Actually, amoeba and bacteria would get into the realm of animal beings with consciousness areas. But actually, plants will get into this thing of animal realms because they do react. Yes. They have to sunlight.
Yeah, so that is the debate. Yeah, just because you experience, you see a response to certain kind of stimuli doesn't mean that the person, that being or that entity has sentience.
Yeah, in Buddhism, they don't have a consciousness. They don't have a consciousness.
So where you draw the line for the boundary for sentience is a big issue. Big issue. So bacteria also, I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure.
and so sorry.
Yeah.
So the hungry ghosts and the what did you say? Preta.
The Pretas and the hungry ghosts, yeah.
Okay.
hell
those
beings.
and the devas, they live in this in
The universe, yes.
in the universe.
Yeah.
And could be on the earth as well.
Yeah, there are terrestrial gods. There are terrestrial gods.
Sorry?
There are terrestrial gods as in our surroundings, yeah. And there is terrestrial hungry ghosts also. So we are surrounded by all these kind of beings.
In Indian mythology, in Hindu mythology, devas are often depicted as interfering in the lives of humans.
Yeah.
I mean, they cause certain things to happen, good and bad sometimes.
Mhm.
Is the Buddhist understanding of devas similar?
Yeah, to a large extent, I would say that yeah, that's true. I mean, there's interaction between the two. Yeah. But in the Buddhist presentation of the cosmology, the human realm is considered to be better than the Deva realm because you get an opportunity to practice the Dharma in this realm. Whereas in the Deva realms, you're just consuming some good karma, that the reward of good karma that you accumulated in the past. the opportunity to practice Dharma is limited there. And also, the other reason why the human realm is considered better is because you have the opportunity to accelerate your training through the practice of Vajrayana and Vajrayana.
So this body is more conducive.
It is more conducive, yeah. It is more conducive. Because here we have an experience of both suffering and happiness. And unless you have an understanding, comprehension of what suffering is, and it's difficult for you to generate a wish or an aspiration to be freed from suffering. So that's the reason, one of the reasons why human realm is considered to be better. But there is interaction. So there are yogis who sit in meditation and are engaged with beings from the other realms.
So none of this has been like the Mind and Life organization and such, like none of them have.
I don't think the engagement, the discussions they have progressed to kind of address these issues. Yeah, they're still kind of grappling with establishing that there's something called a mind, which is distinct from a brain or the neural complex in the body.
I didn't Google, because usually when you Google something, it kind of keeps showing up. And it showed about something about consciousness, and I meant to go back to it, but they're saying they're talking about actually connects with our sense of one consciousness, right? That we have it here in this part of the world. And I didn't read further because I said I'll go back to the next. It's disappeared from my thing, but there is now that they are researching into that sense of consciousness.
Yeah, there are researchers who are exploring this. A lot of researchers do accept that there's a possibility of consciousness being distinct from the brain and the in the Tibetan tradition, there's this practice which helps you attain a state of what is called clear light meditation after death. So at that point, unless you accept the existence of subtle mind, it's very difficult to kind of describe that meditation, that state. Yeah. So there are researchers who are investigating that phenomenon. But there's nothing substantial that's come out so far.
Yeah.
Because you're still kind of trying to identify what is the appropriate instrumentation to register that phenomena, make measurements. It's still kind of in the nascent stages, that research.
Isn't that being to comprehend that there's a measurement, there's an instrument to measure, that would be a little bit difficult. I understand.
Yeah. But it's a difficult thing. But yeah, there's some progress that there's progress been made on that front. Okay, so Bhajan Log and Satvalo. Okay, the other thing that we need to understand when we speak about the truth of suffering is that there are these three different kinds of suffering that describe all our experiences. So there's what is called the suffering, the suffering of change, and all pervasive conditioned suffering. So dukkha, dukkhata, and second one is viparinam dukkhata, and the third one is samskara dukkhata. So the first one, all of us are familiar with. What is suffering of suffering? The regular unpleasant experiences that we have, physical, also mental experiences. And the wish to be free from this type of suffering occurs not just in us, as in us humans, but also in animals. Even animals have a wish to be free from that kind of suffering. The second category is what is called the suffering of change, which is a reference to the normal, pleasurable, pleasant experiences that we have. Essentially, what Buddhism says is that even these pleasant experiences, experiences that we deem to be pleasant, are in the nature of suffering because they are just the initial moments of a new form of suffering. So, for example, right now you're sitting and we have some discomfort in our legs, and you have this wish to get up and just relax and stretch your legs. So the initial few moments of standing up will be pleasant to us. We'll experience some relief. So compared to the experience that we had when we are sitting cross-legged and all that, in this stiffness that develops and discomfort that develops. So the initial moments will be moments of relief, but if it was genuine happiness, then the more you stand, the longer you stand, the pleasantness or happiness you should be able to experience. And that's not what happens. After a while, you again want to sit down and relax. So that initial moments of the pleasant experience or the experience of relief when you stand up is an example of the suffering of change. So most of our pleasant experiences are in the nature of suffering of change. So that's the second category of the suffering. And then, most importantly, the third category, which is called the all-pervasive conditioned suffering. So this is what we need to focus on, because this uh, kind of is the cause for the first two sufferings. So it provides a basis for the first two sufferings, first two kinds of suffering. So how does it do that? So we have all these afflictions in our mind stream, and through these afflictions of attachment, aversion, hatred, um, pride, jealousy, greed, um, ignorance, and all these afflictions, we engage in unwholesome actions. So attachment leads to unwholesome action. Could be, let's say, you desire some object desperately, and you don't have the resources to possess that object, but your attachment is so intense that you want to own that object. And you realize that you do not have the resources to own that object. So maybe you borrow money from somebody else to own that object, but in the process of borrowing, you tell him a lie that, okay, I'll repay your money in 2 months. You know that you won't be able to do that. So you've engaged in the unwholesome action of lying. Or in some extreme cases, you could also engage in the action of taking somebody's life, shortening somebody else's life. So your attachment has driven you in that direction, in the direction of this unwholesome action. So the unwholesome action is the karma. Yeah, it plants some imprints on your mind stream. And what is driving it? It is the afflictions in your mind stream. So karma and afflictions are kind of driving you towards this unwholesome actions. And these unwholesome actions then result in creating the necessary potencies and energies to propel yourself back into samsara through a new form. And that form, along with the mental aggregates that comes with that form, become the basis for a new kind of suffering. So the third category of suffering is essentially a reference to these forces of karma and affliction. They serve as the basis for the first two kinds of suffering. So in order to end suffering, we need to eliminate afflictions, which we need to put a stop to karma, which is driven by affliction. So we need to kind of eliminate afflictions. So that is the bottom line. You need to remove all kinds of afflictions. And amongst the afflictions also, there's a there's an affliction called the affliction of ignorance, which is at the root of all afflictions. So we need to target ignorance. So that is the third level of suffering, the suffering of pervasive conditioning. Why is it called pervasive? Because it applies to all kinds of sentient beings, all kinds of transmigrating beings. And why is it called compositional or conditioned suffering? Because it serves as an aggregator, or it kind of draws in, creates the conditions for present suffering as well as induces future suffering. So an example of the third suffering is your mental and physical aggregates. So these are the example of your of the third kind of suffering. So they are not suffering in essence, but they are the causes of the first two forms of suffering. Yeah, but they are kind of described as suffering still. So these are the three kinds of suffering, and then maybe this we'll go to the next truth. So this was about the truth of suffering, and then we'll just cover the truth of origins of suffering, and then pause and do the meditation. So the truth of the origins of suffering. So briefly kind of addressed in the discussion that we just had. So the suffering and the suffering of change, they're caused by afflictions, right? They're caused by the karma that is created by those afflictions. So afflictions and karma are the true sources of suffering. So the second truth is a reference to these afflictions and karma. And specifically, spoke about this ignorance as being the root of all afflictions. So the ignorance, uh, uh, again, there's a very specific kind of ignorance that is being referred to here. The ignorance which appropriates the aggregates and kind of designates the aggregates, equates the aggregates with the concept of self. So that is the root of all or afflictive states. And the afflictive states, there's a very elaborate description of the afflictive states. 6 primary afflictions and 20 secondary afflictions. So the 6 primary afflictions are, again, there are 2 categories. There are 5 in the nature of non-views, and there's 1 in the nature of a view. So the 5 non-views are attachment, there's anger, there's pride, there's ignorance, and there's doubt. And on the other side, the root affliction in the nature of view, essentially the ignorance that I spoke about, equating the self, equating the aggregates with the self. Yeah. So with the perishable aggregates, self is equated with the perishable aggregates. So that's the 6th root affliction. And then there are 20 derivative afflictions. So I'll not go into the details of each of these afflictions, but based on these afflictions, as I said, what we do is we engage. Yeah. So based on these afflictions, we engage in unwholesome actions. Yeah? So that's the second cause, the cause of karma. And when we speak of karma, there's punya karma, there's apunya karma, and there's a neutral kind of karma. So the first punya karma, it leads to positive and desirable consequences in the human realm, in the realm of gods. The apunya karma essentially kind of leads to rebirth in the lower realms and then unpleasant experiences in the lower realms. And there are different paths through which this karma is activated. So 10 specific parts of karma are identified. So what are these 10 parts of karma? Any idea? Sarva? 10 parts of karma. So there's, we're talking about unwholesome karma, black karma. Yeah. Yeah. So what are these 10 parts? So there are the non-virtues of the body, there's the non-virtues of speech, and the non-virtues of the mind. So yes. So the 3 non-virtues of the body are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And then the non-virtues of speech are lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle gossip, something that we engage in extensively. So it creates a lot of negative karma, so we need to be careful about that. And then the non-virtues of mind, coveting somebody else's resources, generating malice towards others, harmful intent, and wrong views, as in denying the existence of the law of karma and the noble truths. So these are the 10 paths that actually as the black karma. And for each path, let's say we speak about the first path, which is the non-virtues of the body, there's the non-virtues action of killing. So for each action, you can identify 4 factors which need to be realized before you can say that the karma for killing is accumulated. So what are these 4 factors? There's the factor of basis, there's the factor of intention, there's the factor of the actual deed, and then the factor of completion. So the basis, when we speak of killing as an example, the basis is a sentient being who is distinct from your own self. Yeah. And the intention again has 3 sub factors to it. recognition, there's motivation, and then there's the affliction which is driving that motivation. So in the case of killing, you've identified a being as being distinct from yourself. Recognition would have an unmistaken recognition of the being that you intend to kill. So you intend to kill, let's say, being X, and you end up harming somebody, being Y, then the karmic action of killing is not completed. Yeah. So you need to have an unmistaken recognition of the basis, and then we.
If you want to kill being X and you kill being Y, then you have the karmic action of killing Y.
No, so you didn't start off with intending to kill Y, yeah. So you'll accumulate negative karma of the shortening somebody's life, but it won't be the same as accumulating the karma of killing Y, yeah. Because it didn't start off, it was unintentional. Yeah, unintentional. Yeah.
So I mean, like what Israel is doing, they want to kill some leader.
It's knowingly doing
And-
that. It's knowingly. It's doing knowingly. Yeah. It is knowingly doing it. Yeah.
No, they want to kill, let's say, X leader,
Oh.
but in the process, they kill 100 civilians. So
That's being
fine.
done knowingly. They know that there's going to be collateral damage, and they've accepted that. Yeah. So they're accumulating.
Right, sure, but when you're walking and you kill an ant, that's different because you don't walk to kill the ant. No? But if I was, let's say I was going to squat mosquito X, but instead of squatting mosquito X, I squat squatting
Natural damage. Natural damage.
Intention is, yeah. So the motive was to kill X, right?
Yes, but I killed
I
the
want
ant
to kill
instead.
X, right?
I wanted to kill the mosquito, I killed the ant
Well, you
instead,
didn't have the motivation to kill the ant.
No.
Yeah, so in that case, the act of killing the ant won't be the same as it won't result in the same kind of karma as killing the ant with the motivation to kill the ant. The slight difference.
There is a negative karma, but it's not as
It's not
strong
negative.
as
It's not as intensely negative as the karma that you would accumulate if you wanted to kill the ant. It has to start off with that motivation. So wanting to kill is the motivation. And there is an affliction that drives that desire, wanting to kill, right? So it could be attachment, it could be anger, it could be just delusion. So anger, and you get angry at somebody and you get angry at the mosquito, and out of anger you kill the ant. So the affliction that is driving your action of killing is the anger. Yeah. Self-defense. No, again, you'll have to be careful. Yeah. So, if you intend to kill, even if it is just for self-protection, again, it will result in the.
But you defend yourself.
No, if it will, yeah, it will lead to less intense negative karma. But if you mean to kill, even for self-protection, you would accumulate the. Yeah. So, okay, fondness for meat, yeah, that is. Affliction is attachment, right? Attachment for meat. So out of that attachment, if you end up slaughtering the sheep, then you accumulated
Yeah, but if you buy the meat from the shop, then
They're also that one.
Yeah.
I know, but it's different according to what you are
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
won't accumulate the karma of killing the sheep.
Like
You didn't kill it.
Right.
You didn't kill it. But you are kind of still contributing to the process.
Propagating that business,
Yeah.
sure.
So you will accumulate negative karma, but not the same as the karma of actually killing the sheep.
If you were the butcher.
If you were the butcher.
Buddha had said that if the animal wasn't killed specifically for him,
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, there's
Clarify.
yeah.
No, but if
That's
a
what he
butcher
said.
kills, if
No,
a
no, no,
butcher.
I'm just saying, I'm just repeating what Buddha himself has said.
No, I've read that too, but if a butcher kills, it clearly is for sale.
Yeah.
So whoever buys it, it means that he's killed it. Let's say I buy it, that means he's killed it for me because I have I have got it.
But then this is also reasoning, but this is what he has said.
Understand? Yes, I know, but I suppose the society was different then.
Yeah, that's right.
And,
That's-
and
that's right.
so maybe you
Sorry.
killed, like, let's say a guest came and maybe you killed a sheep to, and maybe if I was the guest, I'd say, hey, don't bother killing sheep for me. But in today, we don't, our society is ordered differently.
But it was always like that. Somebody, right? It's not like every household had a give a sheep farm and give its own meat or.
That's
Okay.
the reason these occupations are considered not the right.
Meat is okay, but it's not apparently. No, how can you say that?
No, eating meat is not okay. I mean, the concept is slightly different. The bhikshu is somebody who should accept whatever is offered to him. Yeah, but he's not soliciting meat. If he has that intention of, he goes to a household which he knows that is going to offer meat, driven by this fondness for meat, then he is incurring some sort of a transgression. Yeah. That's not.
What about the non-bhikshus, which is like, the rest of us, what are not?
Even there, you would accumulate some negative karma, but it's not the same as having actually killed the animal.
You don't think that's splitting hair?
No, then yeah. Anyways, the workings of the law of karma are very intricate. Yeah, we don't have a specific formula to kind of this measure what amount of negative karma you can accumulate. What is being presented here is just the general contours of that law of karma. Yeah. So even the desire, because you have fondness for meat and you approach a person who is selling meat, that person is the butcher who slaughtered that meat. You are contributing to the process. Yeah. So you will accumulate some negative karma, definitely. But it's not the same as the negative karma that the butcher would have accumulated. Right? But how much is the difference? Okay, only the Buddha's mind and omniscient mind can actually tell me that. But we can identify these broad contours and the general contours of the law of the workings of the law of karma. So you could have attachment driving your motivation to want to kill, or it could be even delusion. Example of delusion would be, so you believe that sacrificing a chicken would please a certain deity. That practice is could be considered to be an action where you are engaging in the action of killing, motivated to kill, driven by the affliction of delusion. Yeah. And then the third factor is the deed. So you deploy some means, an actual weapon to slaughter the sheep or kill something. So carrying or the killing with a weapon or poison or whatever, that is the actual deed. And then there's a final step. So the final step is the culmination of this act, where the other being is dead before your own death. Yeah. So if you die before the other person's death, other being's death, then the process is not complete. So in a similar manner, you can speak of these 4 factors for the other 9 karmic paths. Yeah. So you can think about these factors when you go back. Yeah, so these are the karmic paths for the 10, the 4 factors for each of the karmic paths. And then we can also think about each of these karmic paths in terms of the results that they lead to. So there are 3 different kinds of results that karmic actions lead to. There's the result which is called ripened result. So killing, for example, what you're doing is shortening some being's life. The ripened result normally is rebirth in the hells. Yeah. So that is the ripened result. Then there's results congruent with the cause. And within that, there are 2 categories. Experience is congruent with the cause and behavior that is congruent with the cause. So the experience congruent with the cause in the case of the black karmic action of killing would be a shortened life. Because you're shortened somebody else's life, you have a similar kind of result that you experience. So you have a shortened life with a lot of sickness. And behavior that is congruent with the cause
tendency.
A disposition to take lives. Yeah. So from a very young age, killing insects, killing birds, all these
Or
kind
you
of.
choose professions which.
Or you could choose
become-
profession because that tendency is very prominent in this mind stream. So this is results that are congruent with the cause, and then there are environmental results, as in the environment that you're born in. So if you have engaged in the action of killing, you're born in an environment where external conditions like food, medicine, drink are not available to you, and even if they are available to you, they're not potent enough. They do not have any effectiveness in curing your illnesses, your sicknesses. So those are the environmental results. So we can speak about these three different kinds of results for the other karmic actions also. Exercise for your homework. Yeah, you go back and think about what could be the ripened result for idle gossip. What could be the what could be the result congruent with the cause for idle gossip and environmental result for idle gossip. So you think about these results. Okay, so these are the two truths, and the truth of cessation and the truth of the paths that lead to cessation. Maybe next session, yeah. So let's just go back to the meditation that we did at the start of the session.
Point.
Yeah.
One is when you spoke about the basis, it could also be like issue, whether you're ordained or not. A layman, when he commits a sin, and then an ordained, a bhikshu, not commits. The results are very different, right?
Yeah, because of the vows that we have taken. Yes. Yes.
Idle gossip also can be an exchange of information there.
Yeah, we'll have to have a good definition for idle gossip here. But that's a dominant activity in our routine, so we need to be very careful. So although it is not intensely negative, because of the frequency with which we engage in that action, we create a lot of negative karma through that. Okay, so yeah, for an ordained person who has taken the vow of not taking somebody's life, of course, you lose the vows, of course, if you engage in that action, and then you create a lot of negative karma, much more than what a person without vows would create. Okay, so let's go back to our meditation with it, and let's see how we can connect with some of the discussion that we had in this session. Okay, so proper posture, keep your back erect, ensure that blood flow, energy flow is not obstructed. So keep your back ramrod straight, arms relaxed, shoulders straight, and the meditation posture. Meditation mudra with the left palm holding the right palm and the thumbs touching each other. And just go back to your breath, normal breath now, and bring the focus of your mind to your in breath and out breath, and observe your breath, in breath and out breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Now bring the focus of your mind to the movement of your chest and observe as you breathe in, does it expand or contract? And if it is expanding, just make a mental note of the movement, say expanding, expanding. And as it falls, say contracting, contracting. So as the chest moves, keep noting without any interruption. So expanding, expanding as it expands, contracting, contracting as it contracts. Now observe the movement of your abdomen. Rising, note it as rising, rising. And if it is falling, just observe and note it as falling, falling. So with every moment, rising, rising, falling, falling, keep noting. So while you're making a note of this moment, you'll find that it's possible that you get distracted. So if your mind wanders, also make a note of that, say wandering, wandering. If you're meeting somebody, then make a note of that too, meeting, meeting. If you're seeing some form, you can note it as seeing, seeing. If you're imagining something, you can make a note of that as imagining, imagining. So just keep noting whatever the mind is doing. And if it is not wandering, then of course it is observing the movement of your abdomen. So rising, rising, falling, falling. So as you make a note of all these movements, you're engaging in the mindfulness of the mind, the chitta or chittanupassana. So all these moments that you're noting addresses the second base of the mindfulness practice. Also, it is possible that after sitting for 2 hours, you're in some discomfort. Your body has become stiff. You're experiencing some pain in your knees, in your back, in your arms. Some parts of the body are feeling warmer than the others. So just note these sensations that are arising on your body. So paining in the joints, or heat, warmth, stiffness. So just make a note of these things that you feel. So as you make a note of these sensations, Vedanas, it addresses the third base of the mindfulness meditation, the Vedanupassana. Mindfulness of the feelings. So if your mind wanders again, make a note, wandering, eating, whatever the mind is doing, just keep noting it. So when you're making a note of all these minds, you realize that there's only a stream of different episodes, mental episodes. So there's wandering, meeting, seeing. So there's this continuum of these episodic events. All these psychophysical events that arise, they're just happening independent of any person driving them. So there's no being that is conducting this process. It's just following causal principles, one event causing the subsequent event to happen. So you find that there's no being as such which is driving this process. So when you cultivate this meditation and you reach more subtle levels where you can maintain a continuum, maintain uninterrupted continuity of noting these mental episodes, you'll find that you realize the absence of any sort of self or any sort of being driving this process. There are only causal principles that are kind of driving these processes. And as you make your concentration powers more subtle, you take any episodic event, analyze the mind. You'll also realize that episode comes about through the force of its causes and conditions. And it has a momentary kind of existence, rises and then disintegrates, and then again something else rises in its place. So if you enhance your concentration levels, then you will also have a realization of the principle of impermanence, momentariness. And also when you make a note of all the unpleasant experiences in your being, in your personal being, you have a realization of the Vedanas, which are in the nature of dukkha. So with sufficiently concentrated mind, you will also have perception of the principle of suffering, of dukkha. So through this kind of meditation, you can build your understanding of these concepts of dukkha, anitya, and the concept of no self or anatma. Okay, now just observe the in-breath and the out-breath as it passes through the nostrils. We will end the meditation with a short dedication. So let's recollect all things that we discussed in our session today, and be certain that we've accumulated some merit through our participation in this discussion. So let's direct that merit that we accumulated through this participation to attaining the ultimate state of omniscience. So due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all sentient beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.